Good evening, everyone. I don't think that the music played right tonight. So, anyway, welcome to Channeling History. Connie, let's try it again. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm Connie Strohm, your co-host, and I would like to also welcome you to our show. Tonight we're going to channel three famous generals and discuss what's taking place in our current military and the future of wars. We'll be channeling Napoleon, George Patton, the famous World War II commander in Europe, and Norman Schwarzkopf, the commander of the coalition forces in the Gulf War. Warfare is changing rapidly, and it will be interesting to find out what these three heroic generals think of the rapid evolving changes.
Yes, we definitely need a short disclaimer tonight. So, the opinions or statements voiced on our show or the channeled words of the spirits do not necessarily reflect our opinions, those of the Parax Network, or of our sponsors. And in addition, before we channel, we always say a prayer of protection. So Connie's going to say the prayer, and we'll begin to channel with our wonderful guest tonight.
God, please grant us your wisdom and protection. Grant us the knowledge that we can handle and keep us safe from all things that will harm us. Keep the messages positive and pure love. Keep us safe from our egos. We ask these things in the light of the seen, the unseen, and the honesty of God.
If anyone wants to submit questions tonight, you're welcome, because these are three really interesting guests. We're going to start with one of the most famous generals of all time, Napoleon Bonaparte. He was born in 1769, died in 1821. He rose to prominence during the French Revolution and the European Napoleonic Wars. He ruled the French Empire from 1804 to 1814. So, Napoleon, thank you for returning. It's great to have you with us again.
Yes, good evening, and thank you for coming. What do you think as you watch the current wars that are taking place, especially the one in Ukraine?
Well, first of all, thank you for allowing me to come back. I am amazed at how technology has increased since my time. In my day, the cannon was the most powerful instrument we had. Small arms, rifles, muskets, bayonets, large militaries, huge amount of people going into battle at the same time. Today, war is so different. The trench warfare now stabilizes front lines. The weaponry is beyond belief. I am obviously, during my time, we didn't have airplanes that would drop bombs or fire machine guns or whatever they fire today. War has so changed. And as I watch the technologies evolve, I have no doubts that it's going to continue at a very rapid pace into the future. What the future holds in warfare will certainly be very interesting. It's amazing how much time and energy humans spend on trying to decide how they can kill more people in a short period of time. So yes, current wars have a different look than what they had in my day, but they're still as deadly. Our battles would be huge. We'd have a lot of men killed and wounded. We didn't do a good job of taking care of our wounded. And today, many men are saved that we would have lost. So it's very interesting to watch, but it's also very frightening.
Yet your military techniques and philosophies had a huge effect on the strategies and equipment used by other countries for many years. Would you please tell our listeners some of your concepts and how the Napoleonic Wars were fought?
They were fought much differently. We had cavalry, and our cavalry was one of the most potent arms of our army. We had cannon, and we had huge infantries. The men in the infantry had bayonets on their weapons, and the big way that we would advance would be simply to charge into the other line. It was had a very high casualty rate. Today, you see men fighting from trenches and from cover. We would line up, and our units would be in a straight line facing each other, and we would fire the muskets. The muskets were not very accurate. We would be able to have grape shot for our cannon when the other side was charging. But basically, the way we fought was a recipe for huge losses. Today, you're much more conscious of the loss of manpower. But in my time, it was very customary. The two armies would simply line up across from each other, fire their cannon and their muskets, and then charge with their bayonets. So there were very, very high casualties in my time.
What would you say were the most important weapons during the Napoleonic Wars?
I think that the most feared aspect of the army was the cavalry, but the most important weapons where we would do much damage was with our cannon. They were smooth bore. They would fire cannonballs or grape shot. They would be loaded by hand. So it was very difficult to have a high rate of fire with them. But the cannon gave us the long reach, the long arm that we needed.
One of our listeners would like to know, why weren't shields used more?
Shields were absolutely ineffective. The bullets would penetrate the shields. The cannon they had no effect. Warfare had outgrown the use of shields.
How was infantry used during your time of command?
They would be used in bulk. We would have a huge number of men line up, and they would charge with bayonets. If you've never seen thousands of men rushing at you with bayonets, it is a frightening thing. So infantry was incredibly important. Cavalry would be a tactical weapon for us. And the infantry, it would be very hard to hide large groups of infantry. So there were very few surprise attacks in those days. We would use different strategies where we would try to draw the army into areas where we could ambush them with our infantries. But infantry was really the key to everything. And the armies were huge. There was nothing to have 50,000 men in uniform at a battle.
Wow. You invaded Russia in 1812 with disastrous results. What happened when you invaded Russia?
I made a major mistake. I should have never invaded at that time of year. I thought that we would be able to have a rapid victory and that we could overrun them and that the weather would not be as great a factor as it turned out to be. The Russians fought back with every individual that they had, and we were delayed. And when the weather turned, we simply ran out of food, ammunition. In those days, you would forage off the land, and you would bring food with you in your wagons, but it was very limited. And as I said, when you're trying to feed 50,000 men, it takes a lot. And I made very serious mistakes, but the largest was I underestimated what effect the winter weather would have on us.
What is your opinion of the Russian army today?
My opinion of the Russian army is not as good as it was 3 years ago. The Russian army was one of the most feared armies in the world. But once the war in Ukraine broke out, you could see that there were definite weaknesses. They used out-of-date ways of fighting. Their leadership was terrible. Their chain of command did not work adequately. And today they are improving their army, but they still have many, many problems. They have lost almost 1 million people in Ukraine in 3 years, and that is a huge amount of people. The losses will have a huge effect on their economy, and the way they are fighting with the inept officers that they have, soldiers or individuals are very, very reluctant to join because they know that it's simply a death sentence. So the Russian army is very large, still very powerful, but it is certainly not to be feared as it was 4 years ago.
Why do you think Russia has never been conquered in modern times?
The people of Russia will literally sacrifice their lives for their country. The propaganda that they use and have used for hundreds of years is that individuals should be willing to die for their country. And women, children, men, old men, they will fight. When they're pushed to the wall, they will come out of the woodwork to grab a weapon and to fight. The Russian people have been lied to, and they think that everyone is against them in the world. And when the time comes, they simply do know how to fight. They also know how to use the weather, obviously, and they've used the weather against Germany, and they used it against us and everyone else that tried to invade. You have a short period of time in Russia where you can truly fight without the weather turning against you.
What do you see as the future of Russia?
I see great problems in the future of Russia. No country can lose the manpower that they are losing. The rate of their young men dying or being wounded is phenomenal. They will have many, many individuals that have long time wounds that will have to be cared for. Their medical system is going to be overtaxed if the war continues. But Russia has switched to what you would call a wartime economy. Instead of negotiating the end, they have committed themselves to the future. Their greatest employer right now is in making supplies for the military. The common people are not being cared for. The roads, there's no maintenance. The sewage system, water piping, heat, all of these things are not being taken care of. And there will be a time that they will have to pay the piper.
Yeah. Excluding nuclear weapons, what do you see as the future of modern warfare? And what will be the most important weapon of the future?
I have been amazed at what's taken place. The Ukrainian army has taken these cheap drones and converted them into weapons that are extremely deadly. They are developing weapons that a human does not have to operate. They are using artificial intelligence to develop these weapons that will choose a target and deliver the explosive to that target without commands from the individual that was piloting it in the past. The future of weapons is in artificial intelligence and robotics. There will be a time that you will have robots that will be able to fight in the field. Men will be back in their lines, and they will simply turn the robots or drones or unmanned vehicles of many different types loose. There are now tanks that are operated without any human individuals in them. So artificial intelligence and robotics will be the key to the future.
We have another question from the chat room. What realm are you in heaven?
I am in the fifth realm.
Thank you. What's your opinion of the military of the United States?
The military of the United States is the most powerful in the world. The United States spends billions and billions of dollars on their military. But there are times that very poor decisions are made. Things are changing incredibly rapidly in warfare today. And I question whether the United States is truly adapting to it. They're spending huge amounts of money for very high-tech airplanes that cannot be detected by radar. Should they be spending money for other things, such as more deadly drones? Are swarms of drones with explosives the way of the future? There's going to be many, many changes. The question is whether the Army can adapt to these changes. So it's a question of who has the greatest technologies. Okay.
So what's your opinion of the military of China?
China is trying to grow very rapidly with its military, but it has economic problems as well. Traditionally, Chinese military has relied upon stealing the secrets of the United States. And they will take American weapons and try to improve on them. They will take their technologies and do the best they can to try to improve on the technologies. They are growing very rapidly, and there's no question that they will have the largest military and possibly even the largest navy in the world. But how effective that army and navy will be is another question. They do not have the advantage of experience in fighting wars. Their military has been growing, but it is a trained military. What they know is not based on the experience of fighting and fighting with other high-tech militaries. So they will try. Whether they succeed or not, that will be the question.
Let's hope not. Do you see any time in the future when there will be peace in the world?
No. Sadly, the armies of the world are going to want to use their technologies. If an army feels that they have a huge advantage over another, they're going to try to take advantage of it. The way things are trending right now, I find it very, very difficult to see peace in the world, especially with countries like Iran that are making it a religious issue. So there will probably be a time in the distant future where there is peace, but I do not see it in the near future.
So if you were alive today, how would you pursue world peace?
I would pursue peace through strength. I would make the Allied militaries so strong that nobody would test them. Through that strength, I think you would have the possibility of assuring that others would not attack and would not do what they would do to kill us. So I think that the whole answer is having secure information sources, having technologies that cannot be stolen by other countries, and using the wherewithal that the free countries have to advance as rapidly as possible. I think that is the only answer for long-term peace.
Sounds good. Do you think the current leadership in the world is even capable of obtaining world peace?
No, I don't see any leadership that's capable of obtaining world peace.
Yeah. Okay, do you have a final message for us?
Yes, thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I do watch very closely from over here, and I watch what's taking place, and I try to truly understand what is taking place. I think that I might want to return sometime soon and be in the military because it's going to be a very exciting time of advancement and change. So thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I know that General Patton is here and he has much to say. So goodbye and thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Your insight is very valuable, and we wish our political leaders would pay attention to your advice. We're now going to speak with General George Patton, one of the most effective leaders of World War II. General Patton, thank you for returning to our show. What do you think as you watch the current wars that are taking place, especially the one in Ukraine?
Well, I had a lot of experience with the Russian army when I was during World War II. I felt they were overrated, but I realized that the country of Russia was going to be our greatest enemy of the future. As I watched them in Ukraine, I realized that their leadership is a bunch of idiots. I realized that they are stealing more from the army. The officers are taking what they want. They are stealing. They are doing all of the things that undermine the fighting man. The officers do not take chances in the Russian army. They stay in the back. There's very poor field leadership. I think that they are especially vulnerable to a good modern army. I think that NATO could run over them in a couple of weeks if they put their mind to it. There would be no match for the United States, and I think they know it. So let's just say that I'm not real impressed with what I'm seeing by the different militaries that are taking on the free countries of the world.
Okay, during World War II, your primary weapon of choice was the tank. What do you see as the future of the tank warfare?
Tank warfare is going to change. The invention of using drones has been a terrific deterrent to successfully using tanks. Today, you're not seeing tanks being used wisely on the front of advances. The Russians still use their tanks. They put them on the front, and they have lost an incredible number of them in the war. I think that in the future, tanks are going to be of a smaller size, and I think that they're going to be robotic. I believe that tanks are going to be operated from the rear of the lines, and I do not believe that they will be the true weapons of the future. We're seeing rocket warfare that can strike hundreds of miles into a country. So there's literally no safe rear lines anymore. Airfields are under attack. There are many, many changes in tactics. And I think that, sadly, the tank, there will be a time in the future, in the not too distant future, that they're basically obsolete.
What do you see as the most important weapon of the future?
I see laser weapons as probably the most important weapons of the future. They're very cheap. Today, when you fire an artillery shell, it's thousands and thousands of dollars per shell. Laser weapons are very cheap to use. They're very expensive to develop. But once you have them, they can be very, very effective. They're mostly a line of sight weapon, but they can be used very accurately in a defensive position. They can be used to destroy. I think that there will be developments in the use of lasers where they will be put onto airplanes, ships. When you are at a great altitude, you can fire a laser weapon an awful long distance. So I believe in my mind that perhaps the new laser weapons that are being worked on will be the important weapons of the future.
Yeah. What do you see the role of artificial intelligence doing in the future?
A huge role. The way that advancements are taking place so rapidly today, what the Ukrainian army has done in using drones both on the water and in the air and on the land are basically changing the concepts of modern warfare. Artificial intelligence will be incorporated into these drones, and they will become incredibly effective weapons of the future. So I see AI as the way to military dominance. I think that the country that comes up with the most effective intelligence and ways of operating their weapons remotely will be the countries that will be able to determine the future.
Yeah. What's your opinion of the current United States military?
I think that they're wasting great amounts of money on weapons that will be obsolete. The war of the future is going to be fought worldwide. We have an immense Navy, and that Navy is in all of the oceans of the world. Modern technology in submarines, in naval drones, are going to change the way that we have to think about using our navies. I think that in the future, the Navy is going to not be able to get within a close striking distance of an enemy because their weapons are going to be able to strike so far in distance. It would surprise me in the future if an aircraft carrier could get within several thousand miles of an enemy. You will need time to react to the weapons that are being fired at our naval vessels. And that time will only be able to be gained through technologies and through distance. If a weapon has to travel further, you have more time to react to it. Many of the weapons will be fired from outer space. No matter how you try to de-weaponize outer space, there will be a time that countries put weapons out there. And we will have to be able to defend against them. And I believe that probably laser warfare might be some of the best defense at that time.
So then aircraft carriers are going to be obsolete, right?
There will be a time that we will not be able to defend the carriers. As weapons become much more effective and artificial intelligence controls those weapons, the whole question of what you can accomplish with a Navy is up in the air. And I'm sure I don't know the answer.
Yeah. At the close of World War II, you wanted the Allies to invade Russia. Do you think that was a good idea?
I think it was a very difficult idea, but it would have avoided a lot of problems. If we would have taken the opportunity and defeated the Russian military, history would have been so much different. The citizens of Russia would have had a real chance to live normal lives. Instead, communism took over, and, well, we all know how that turned out.
Yeah. What do you think of the current Russian military?
I think that they're one of the weakest militaries in the world at this point. They're relying on countries like North Korea for weapons. They're doing many stupid things. They have the most inept officer corps in the world. The oligarchs steal from the military. If the military receives 50 cents on the dollar of funds that are to be allocated towards them, I would be surprised. Yeah. They are poorly equipped. You see soldiers actually having to buy their own equipment. So the Russian military can be effective as long as they have overwhelming manpower. But if they were to face the air power of NATO and the United States combined, they would be overrun in several days. Okay. I think that their military, in reality, is one of the weaker ones in the world.
Then you think we should still invade them?
No, I don't think you should invade Russia because I would give them an excuse to use their nuclear weapons. We have to figure some way in which to neutralize their weapons. We don't really know how well the weapons work because so much money has been stolen from them, so you don't know how much money has been spent. Nuclear weapons actually require a lot of maintenance through the years. So nobody really knows exactly how many nuclear weapons Russia has that will work, but even one is too many. So we should never give them the excuse to use them. And if we invade their motherland, that would give them the excuse. And they have said that if they are invaded in strength, that they will use their nuclear weapons.
What do you think should be our support for NATO?
I think that the current president is correct in that NATO has got, the European countries have got to step up and spend more money for their own defense. There is no doubt that Europe has depended on the United States to defend them. But I think that NATO should be supported and that the country should be forced through economic pressures or whatever to increase the spending. And I think that NATO should become literally the second strongest military force next to the United States.
Do you think Europe is capable of defending itself without the support of the United States?
Probably not. We've always had to come to their support. They have very strong armies. But if China and Russia were to join together, they would be overpowered, and only the United States could stop it.
Okay. How would you handle the United States' support for Ukraine?
I would give them all of the weapons that they could use. I would not put any of our soldiers there to die, but I would support them in every way I can, because when you weaken Russia, you're doing a good thing for the world. And Ukraine will protect their property if they're given the equipment to do it.
What's your opinion of the Chinese military?
That is the military to be feared in the future. They're spending huge amounts of money on their military. They're trying to build carriers. They're trying to build a large navy so that they can strike further away from their mainland. China is truly to be feared. They will, at some time, flex their strength. And my guess is it will be in Taiwan, and we'll have to make some big decisions.
So, General, how would you handle China?
I would build the military to a strength that they cannot comprehend. I would start by ejecting as many of the Chinese spies as I could find. I would stop them from buying properties next to our bases in this country. I would make sure that they cannot access our technologies. I would make our facilities so secure that they wouldn't even think about trying. I would eliminate them from having control over our internet systems. I would do everything to treat them as the enemy that they are.
Do you think the current world leaders are even capable of handling the world problems?
I think that the majority of the world leaders sadly are idiots. They have sat back and they thought that Russia would not attack, that Russia would not try to expand, that world peace was becoming a reality. And it gave Russia and China and North Korea the opportunity to weaponize to the extent that they currently are weaponized. You have an idiot in North Korea that has a large nuclear arsenal. How do you control him? China is flexing its muscle. They're building nuclear weapons as fast as they can. So what has taken place in the last 20 years has been a disaster for world peace.
Do you ever see a time where there will be world peace?
So much has to change. There has to be internal problems with China. Their economy has to fail, and that would take the money away from their military. I don't know what you do with North Korea. Russia will defeat itself if you give them enough time. But no, I do not think these leaders are capable of finding world peace.
Okay, do you have a final message for us, General?
Yes, I do. Thank you so much for allowing me to come through. I hope that people would actually listen to what we say. I know that the military basically needs to be rebuilt, and I'm hoping that the current leadership can do that. So thank you, and you know I'm always here when you need me.
And we appreciate that, sir.
Thank you, General Patton. No one ever accuses you of not speaking your opinion. Okay, we're now going to talk with Norman Schwarzkopf, the Allied commander of the Gulf War against Iraq in 1991. His strategy of warfare defeated Iraq in around 100 hours. So, General, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
And thank you for all you did for the world. So, what do you think as you watch current wars that are taking place, especially the one in Ukraine?
As I watch the current wars, I think that things simply never change. People always want to kill the other person. There are always individuals that have no conscience that want political power. And there are leaders in the world that have absolutely no compulsion in trying to take another country's land. It's not easy. The wars are using technologies that I never imagined. War is getting incredibly complicated, and computers will play an immense role in it as time goes on.
Yeah. One of our listeners would like to know, is the Panama Canal at risk?
Stupid decisions have been made with the Panama Canal, and there is a real possibility that the canal is at risk from China.
Okay. The Gulf Wars depended heavily on tank warfare. What do you see as the future of tank warfare?
I think the tank has a real problem in the future. The use of drones has been horrendous for anyone trying to fight in the tank. You can take a $300 drone and blow up a $30 million tank. It's incredible what the army of the Ukraine has done with technologies. I think that in the future, tanks will not be able to defend themselves against laser weapons. And I think that as time goes on, tanks will be automated where they will not have live crews, and there will be a time that they just simply will not be effective.
How do you think artificial warfare will affect what takes place on the battlefield?
I think that's the way of the future. You're going to see drones, you're going to see robots, you're going to see artificial intelligence taking over and making warfare decisions. You're going to see a type of war that you've never seen before. There will be a time that weapons are going to be, hopefully there'll be a time that weapons become so effective that no one will want to have them used upon their country. And that may be the time that peace becomes a reality.
That would be nice. Excluding nuclear weapons, what do you see as the most important weapon of the future?
Lasers are going to be important, but I think that the artificially intelligent-driven drones are going to be the way of the future, both in the water and in the air. I think that you will have swarms of drones that will be able to inflict incredible damage. Hopefully, technologies will be able to defend against them in the future. But I see warfare totally changing. I don't see large armies facing off with each other. I see many of the decisions being made remotely from the battlefields. I see warfare as something that would be very difficult to imagine at this time.
What is your opinion of the current United States military?
I think that the United States military is currently the strongest in the world. I think we have great superiority in the air. Our stealth equipment is better than anyone else's. But I think that attempts to weaken the military are very real and that they have to be overcome. Individuals are still selling obsolete weapons to the military. The profit motive in the military complex is huge, and they have a lot of effect on where the dollars are spent. The men in charge have got to step back and truly understand the future of warfare, and they have got to keep ahead of what is currently taking place.
What's your opinion of the current Russian military?
I am shocked at the incompetency that we're seeing in the current war. They continue to use outdated tactics. Their leadership is terrible. They continuously are falling into traps. They've lost probably 1 million men at this point in 3 years. The question is how long they can sustain it. They rely on foreign countries now. The North Korean army, they're using artillery shells from North Korea. They are paying soldiers from Africa to fight. The Russian military is in trouble. The Russian military will undermine the economy of the country. And when the economy crashes, support for the military is going to be very difficult to find. I think that the Russian military is on very thin ice at this time.
So how would you handle Russia?
I would strangle their economy. I would lower the price of oil because they rely on oil income for so much. I would help the Ukrainians destroy their oil handling facilities, their refineries. I would cut them off economically from the rest of the world, and I would just simply strangle them economically. The people will turn against the leadership if things get tough enough.
Okay. Another question from our chat room. What major U.S. military projects should be canceled?
I would look closely at some of the allocations for the Navy. I think that the modern weapons are capable of destroying many of the ships that we have. I'm not sure how our fleets will handle swarms of drones at any time. So I would focus on the future of naval warfare, and I would put as much money as I could into space warfare and into basically our stealth equipment.
What country do you see as the greatest danger to the United States?
China. China has the manpower. China has the economic wherewithal to do it. And China has set their goals to be the greatest country in the world. So they make no doubts about it. They are out there. They are building up their military. They're building nuclear weapons. They're doing all of the things to bring in other countries that will support them. China has got to be defeated in many different ways, not just militarily. The countries that are supporting China have got to suffer economically as well as China must suffer into the future. Economic strangulation, I believe, is the true key to weakening countries in the future.
How would you handle the war in Ukraine?
I would arm Ukraine as great as I could. I would make sure they understand that we're not going to put our soldiers there to fight with them. But I would give them the weapons that they need to defend themselves, and I would allow them to strike military targets in the country of Russia. I would support them in actually trying to gain more land in Russia. Their offensive there has had great effects. I would do everything that I could do to help them, because if Russia defeats Ukraine, they will in the future attack other countries, and they will be NATO countries. And then you will have to decide what you're going to do, and it must result into a direct conflict with Russia. And you have to assure that they don't use their nuclear weapons, and I'm not sure how you do that.
You're very familiar with the Middle East. How would you handle Iran?
If I was in charge, Iran has the nuclear weapon. We know that over here. And intelligence services understand that as well. I would attack their nuclear facilities. I would destroy any hope that they ever had of putting together nuclear weapons that they could use. I know that they are being supported by Russia, and Russia can give them nuclear weapons. And I also know that nuclear weapons can be quite small. But I would make sure that I undermined the leadership and destroyed their nuclear weapons. The people of Iran want freedom, and I would do everything that I could to support the people and allow them to get a government under which they can survive and under which they can become a real country. The people of Iran want nothing more than to be able to exist with the rest of the world. They love Western technologies. I mean, they are very, very good people. I would do what I could to assure that the leadership was changed.
How far along is that weapons program that they have?
They are there. The inspectors have not been able to see their facilities for quite a while. They have what they need to make nuclear weapons, and we are very sure over on this side that they already have made several of them. It takes very strong action, and there is no more time. You've kicked the can down the road long enough with them, and they have taken advantage of it.
Another question from the chat room. What kind of information was gathered through that Chinese spy balloon that flew by that Chinese spy balloon that flew over our country in 2023?
They learned about where we have a lot of our secret facilities and where we're trained, where we are, what type of secret weapons we're working with. Even though we had been secure in many of the facilities on the land, the Chinese caught us off guard with that balloon, and that is not the only one. Other balloons have been kept a secret from the people. So they learned some valuable information, but not earth-shaking information. They got to see some of our secret weapons, but they got to see them from a distance.
What major weapons of the United States do you see as becoming obsolete in the modern warfare?
In modern warfare, I think that what's going to be obsolete is going to be the tank. We've discussed that multiple times. The weapons that will be used in the future, you really have no idea what they're going to be. There's going to be a lot of laser equipment, and that's going to make big differences. The entire concept of a deep water navy has to be reassessed in light of the modern weapons. The drones, the water drones, you're going to see submarine drones that are capable of firing torpedoes with small atomic warheads. The weaponry is changing incredibly rapidly. And many of what you see today, just like the bayonet on the rifle, that is obsolete, because armies today, they stand off at distances to fight each other. Front lines are going to be 20 miles apart in the future. Things are going to be very different.
Okay, what do you see as the future of drones?
I see drones as one of the major advances in warfare. Drones are relatively cheap. And once you incorporate artificial intelligence into them, that they can select their own targets, that will eliminate them being able to be destroyed electronically. They would just simply take their target, and there was no external systems to work with. and they would be highly effective. You're seeing it starting to take place in Ukraine today with autonomous drones. You'll see drones having much more speed, more flexibilities, more difficult to shoot down. Drones are going to be changing drastically. What happens to when you get a stealth drone, for instance? That concept is not far off. I know there's people working on it. If there are drones that cannot be seen by radars, you're not going to be able to destroy them. So there's the future of drones is going to have a huge effect in the near and middle term of warfare.
Yeah. What changes would you make to the United States military?
They're making major changes to the role of the Marines. They're making small strike units, and I think they're doing what is right with the Marine Corps. The Navy, I think, is the division that will see the most changes and be at the most risk. Sea warfare has changed drastically. The Ukrainians have basically driven the Russian Navy out of the Black Sea. There are many situations in naval warfare that have to be addressed. How you can defend against some of the high-tech weaponry of the future, and even what that high-tech weaponry will be, is yet to be determined. So I see a lot of problems. I see the need for effective defense against intercontinental ballistic missiles. You now have North Korea with the ability to strike Hawaii. You now have many opportunities for nations. The missiles today go into deep space, into outer space, and come back down at incredibly high rates of speed. Interceptions are a problem. It may be that our military will be able to design laser shields where when a missile would strike this shield that they would be destroyed. I don't think it's too long until you start seeing some of the amazing weapons of the science fiction movies coming to life. The future is basically unlimited. What will come is going to amaze everyone. Warfare is going to change every 10 years. So we have got to stop making plans for weapons that we cannot bring online for 15, 20 years because things can change so much. Flexibility is going to be the key in the future. And our military has got to be incredibly flexible. And they must adapt immediately when they see new technologies being introduced. They're not doing that well today. So it's going to be quite a ride.
Thank you. Do you have any final message for our listeners?
Yes. Modern technology is doing amazing things to the military. The United States military is the most powerful military in the world. China is trying to overtake it. Russia will never overtake it, nor North Korea. But China is the real enemy. They have established facilities in this country that they conduct spy operations from. They have bought properties next to our secret bases so they can observe what we do. We need to become very aggressive towards China. We need to isolate them from the country as best we can. And we need to not be economically dependent upon them. We buy so many items from China that they have a bit of a stranglehold on our country at this time. Things have to change. People have to become realistic. And we have to face our enemies. If you do not accept the realities of what's taking place, we will pay the price in the future. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak. It's been a pleasure. Have a great day.
And I thank all of you. I wish you had reincarnated about 30 years ago so you could be running our military and government now. So all of our Channeling History shows are available on our YouTube channel. It's in the name of Barry Strohm, and the channel has over 770 videos available now. In addition to Channeling History, we do 3 other podcasts: HelloHeaven on Friday nights, a weekly message from Jesus on Wednesday mornings, and a Sunday sermon. All of our shows are dedicated to bringing you a better understanding of the afterlife and human history. Please subscribe to our broadcasts and give us a like. It helps with our various search algorithms.
As well as a like, please leave reviews for my books on Amazon. It's very difficult to get people to do it. It only takes about 5 minutes, and it really helps us. I finished my 11th book. It's called Jesus, the Missing Years of Modern Gospel. It's available on Amazon in paperback, hardcover, audiobook, Kindle, whatever you would like to do, you can get that book in that format. I think it's an amazing book. We speak of the truth of the life of Jesus, the 30 years that no one else talks about. We channel 24 different spirits. It's a very, very informative book. It'll change the way that you think about our Lord, and it can save lives. It can literally change your life. Once you understand the truth of what he went through, you'll never look at our Lord the same way again.
Thank you for joining us tonight on Channeling History. We always try to bring you the truth about history and the afterlife by speaking to the souls that live the events. The spirits want you to know the truth and are able to step forward and bring you the truth. So please tell your friends about our show. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and give us a like. It'll help us increase our listenership.
Yeah, the only way that we can reach more people with all of our shows is through your help. If the listeners tell other listeners and bring them to our shows, then we have a real chance to expand. The only thing Connie and I want to do is to bring the truth to individuals, the truth about the afterlife, the truth about God, and the truth about history. I've always been a history nut. I love history, and I've really enjoyed doing this. We've been doing it now for about 4.5 years, and I've enjoyed it, and I hope all of you have enjoyed it as well. All of our shows are on our YouTube channel. It's in my name, Barry Strohm. If you want to download them, you can go to Podbean, BEAN.com, and search for Channeling History. So I hope you enjoyed our show tonight. I know we did. It's very informative. So thank you for listening. Please join us Sundays at 6 p.m. Pacific Time on the ParaX Radio Network.
Thanks for listening to Channeling History. Tune in again next week for another electrifying episode, as we never know who will make an appearance or who will come through the portal. Any rebroadcast or other use of this program without explicit permission is strictly prohibited. Copyright 2020. Our Story Begins by Kevin MacLeod, licensed through Incompetech.com.